You are listening to the Design Your Dream Home. Sorry, Doug. Did I stun you? Okay. Do it again. You're like, whoa.
Go ahead.
Here we go. Let's do it again.
My concussion.
Yeah, I seem like you look frightened.
This is another episode of Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. And now the architects, Doug Pat and Stephen Chung.
You are listening to the Design Your Dream Home podcast with Doug and Steve. I'm Steve, and that's Doug over there. Good morning, Doug.
Good morning, Stephen. How you doing today, buddy?
How are you? I know how you're doing. Hey,
I'm sorry.
It's midsummer, and we thought that it would be nice to take a minute and just kind of reflect back on the past year and how we made this change from you and I talking and having a lot of guests, a lot of great colleagues, and sort of take stock of where we are and where we want to keep going. The summer is a good time for that. It's August, and a lot of architects are seemingly away. It just happens this way that architects, because their clients are usually away, this is a time for them to sometimes take a break. So, what have you been up to?
Well, let's see. Work is a little slow for me. Our office in Greenwich, Job's office in Greenwich, is keeping busy, but they haven't had any smaller projects to kind of feed off in my direction. I've taken a couple projects locally, so I'm keeping busy with that. And I've done some neat things with a couple companies, one called SimScale that makes simulation software for architects, and a couple other projects. I've been working on a new program for me called FontLab. FontLab is for creating fonts, and I've been using that with some architectural lettering stuff. So it's always neat to learn new things. And for me, I love learning something new, hopefully every day. And so I've been working on FontLab and putting together a new video about architectural hand lettering. So I'm doing all kinds of interesting, different things. So how about you, man? What you working on?
Well, first of all, it's always amazing to hear that you're always doing something, whether it's conventional architectural practice or who knows what, making films or videos or writing books or making Instagram projects. It's always neat to hear you doing different things. I'm always admiring.
Thanks.
That you're a lifelong learner for sure.
Thanks.
Hey, so I heard you had a little accident.
Yeah, I'm a little slow today. I was riding my mountain bike yesterday morning, got to the top of a very short hill, and it was a location with a lot of roots, and they can be really dangerous when it's wet. And so I had my head down, and within seconds I had slammed into a tree. A big tree portion of the tree had broken off and looked like a bridge over this path. And I'll tell you, had I had my head down about 6 inches, I would have cleared it. But anyway, I didn't see it, slam right into it, blacked out, woke up on the ground. And so I didn't go to the doctor, of course, but I'm fairly certain I have a concussion. So I had all the symptoms. And yesterday was
I don't know why I'm
yesterday
laughing.
was a very slow day. And I'm slowly getting back to normal. So I couldn't read yesterday or look at the TV. And I was telling you, as I closed my eyes to go to bed, it looked like a Galaga screen. I mean, there were so many colors and everything was moving. I thought, holy shit, this is crazy. So anyway, today's a little better, and we'll see where I end up. But it was a challenging day yesterday.
Okay, so you have a built-in excuse if you say anything crazy and
idiotic,
swear like you just did, and that's and I'll attribute it to your concussion.
Okay, so anyway, there you have it. I can still laugh. Always laughing at myself.
You know what I did this past weekend? There's an editor from a website called Road Trippers. They asked me to create a road trip kind of map for an architectural tour of the East Coast. That was fun to put together a tour and going through Massachusetts, through New York, sort of from New York and then up Rhode Island and Connecticut, and I think that was sort of a fun to kind of
great idea.
Yeah, no, I think I mean I do it. We do it right in our lives. I mean, that wasn't all in one road trip, but these are places that I visited and enjoyed, and it was really a kind of a tour through Cambridge and Newport and New York City, upstate New York, and so on. And we'll see if people will people enjoy that. That's the site for not for architects, but people who like to travel and explore. And also was able to create a guide of a couple of things that an architect brings with them, and maybe what they might want to bring with them on their trip. For example, for me, it's this laptop that I'm using right now. It's a high-powered, performance-oriented, graphics-intensive laptop, which is very small, and it took a long time to sort of find that. Of course, it's a gaming computer. That's what we need in terms of power. Also. There's a handheld Steadicam called an Osmo Mobile that I really enjoy bringing with me to kind of do cute little shots where just super smooth. So anyway, it was fun to kind of take a minute and just sort of think about how we look at things. I guess the gear that we bring with us. I don't really think about it too much. It's just that we go look at buildings and I bring stuff with me, and it's sort of been thought about for a long time, and why exactly I have this laptop and this gear with my phone that I can sort of put my phone in this little handheld device and make little really smooth video. So anyway, that was a fun little detour, and we'll see if people get anything out of it.
How did Road Tripper find you?
I think it's from the PBS show. I noticed that on their website they have different television presenters. There's a guy from Ghost Hunters or something like that, and his trip is about haunted places and things like that. Sanitarium and cemeteries, and mine is less dark, but anyway, we'll see. It's fun. And hopefully, I also mentioned, of course, that if anyone enjoys the tour, that please tune into Doug and Steve and get some good information about their home. So this is a halftime episode, let's say, where we want to kind of reflect back and think about where we've come from and what we've been doing, and we'd love some feedback on kind of the format. We started really going through a house and certain aspects of a house, for example, bathrooms, and you and I shared our tips about designing these spaces and how homeowners could get the most out of them. We did that for a bit. I think that was really fun to just sort of talk back and forth with you and provide as much information as possible to homeowners. And then at a certain moment, I think we went through the entire house. We thought, well, let's sort of call on some colleagues across the country, architects, designers, to see if they could help us. We wanted to really learn from them. We wanted to kind of get their insight, and so I'm curious to see what homeowners think about this format change. Whether they're getting more out of sort of listening to others, or they prefer to hear you and me. I mean, and talk about really specific design or areas of a house. So I'd love to have some feedback on that. What's your thought in terms of the format change?
Well, it's interesting. You and I talked about, when we first got together, we talked a lot about what format would work best. And, one of the things that's really important for me is that it's not just architects listening to us. Mm-hmm. Probably because, with How to Architect, I'd love to see How to Architect, the YouTube channel. I'd love to see a kind of broader base, and always wondered how to create interesting content so that ultimately that base would grow beyond just architects. And it has, and I think at the end of the day, most people that listen to How to Architect, watch How to Architect, are simply people that are interested in architecture. So it's not just architects, but whatever it is that I do, and I hope whatever it is that you and I do, we're not just talking, we're not just preaching to the choir, because then it's a vacuum, mm-hmm. to use a phrase that you used earlier, that, we'll be in this challenging space where it's a limited audience, and we all know what most of us think. Right. And so we're just kind of trudging through the same ideas and reiterating things, and we're not really teaching anything to anybody. Mm-hmm. So, the content issue has always been something that you and I have talked about. What I do like about, and so I guess what I'm getting at is, when you first said, Doug, let's start interviewing people, I thought, well, that's what everybody's doing, So why the heck would we do the same thing that everybody's doing? However, even relative to the people that we've interviewed thus far, it isn't just architects. And I think the content has been really interesting. And it's been a lot of fun to just sit and listen to what other people have to say about, the questions that, we kind of know how we would answer already. So in that respect, I've definitely found it more interesting. And I look forward to broadening the kind of people that we ultimately talk to as well. And I think, when I look at other people, the kind of content that other people listen to, it is sit-down interviews of others. The more variety, the kind of people that we can get to come in here and talk to us, I think the more interesting the show is going to be. So I really like the format. I think it's cool. I mean, I think it's useful, and it was fun to sit and ask questions and answer them. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a lot better if we get lots of different people in here and talk to them.
Yeah, agreed. You and I already used up all the stuff that we know, right? About the first. I don't know anymore.
Just listen here. Yeah.
No, but it's and so we've expanded the kind of interviews to include, there's architects, hopefully other designers, interior designers, landscape. We talked to a head of an architecture department in New York, and so we're talking to people across the country. Different age groups, different demos. I think it's really fun just to kind of talk to lots of different people. So I've enjoyed it too. I want to keep doing that. I think what's important is certainly while we learn from these different architects, and the architects are pointing to their websites where you can learn more about them. We do ask them to, give us some tips, give us some advice that we could pass along to homeowners. And I found that to be always enjoyable because, I don't know, you and I are thinking about certain things. We know each other pretty well, and it's pretty amazing to hear some guy in Arkansas or California and what they're thinking about and what advice they have for homeowners. And I find it really interesting. It's just not kind of what I thought about. And, this guy in Arkansas, the rogue architect, talking about thinking about design build and what that might be like and why you might want to consider that as an option. And I don't have a lot of experience with that. So it's really interesting for me to learn about it. But that is something that certainly a homeowner, can consider. I think that's really interesting to know. And just, for example, talking to Mark Gardner in New York and the kind of amazingly complicated permitting process in New York and how important it is to have a professional on your side to help you navigate through that. Forget the design, just so you can build something. And so, there's really interesting characters. We want to keep bringing more on there. And certainly if people who are listening have some ideas or people that they'd like to hear us talk to, please send that along and we'll connect with them. And hey, almost every architect I've asked, they're happy to do it. It's never no. It's maybe I can't do it this month, but maybe next month. So I think architects and designers are generally very happy to sit down and share their thoughts. So it's been great. I mean, I think we really have unlimited kind of possibilities of where we can go, and certainly we can interview some famous architects if people want to. I mean, we have access to them. It's not a problem for my television show just knowing them. A lot of them are not doing houses anymore, but nevertheless, if people find it interesting to talk to them, we can certainly talk to them.
As we're talking here, I'm wondering whether or not it might be really interesting to have designers in general on the show. I think about my brother. My brother was at Nike and eventually made his way to Converse and then Cole Haan. And he's head of the men's division at Cole Haan. And this guy deals with designers all day long. And I designed a house for him.
Oh, really?
So I think it would be really cool. I mean, to just take the I designed a house thing away for a second. You talk to a designer and then you talk to them about what they're interested in and what they look for in a house. I think that could be really interesting.
Yeah, I think so. That the brother, there's a lot of different angles there, but certainly from a client perspective, I think that might be really interesting. And also, I mean, any client to me, almost every client is sort of a designer in a way, a co-designer with us or with me, and so it might be interesting to hear somebody who's gone through that process and they're creative people, and how is it that we collaborate with each other to get what they want. I mean, it's not their area of expertise, but nevertheless they have a creative mind and they know what they want and how do they work with an architect. So I think that's a great idea. I'd love to, whether it's your brother or another client or whoever. I think we should definitely pursue that route.
Oh, we could get a lot of really fun designer types on through Scott.
Or just clients that are not even designers. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, good idea. I'm into that. Let's try that.
Awesome.
All right, good night. Is that it?
And cut.
No, I like that. We should definitely do that. Doug, it's interesting because this I'm going to teach a studio in I think the spring of next year at the New England School of Art and Design, and it's because I've been very involved in interior design with this hotel.
Yeah,
and it's so interesting because it's certainly architecture, but interiors, and people don't realize that architects, especially in school, we don't get into interior materials, furniture, lighting. I mean, there's like 5 years of building systems and exterior building design and site design and exterior details, but it's so little about interior space, and this is what's so much affects kind of our daily lives, right? The experience of interior space. Yeah. And so I approached the director of this school and said, listen, I'm an architect, but I really want to do something with hotels, hospitality, something about interiors. And he said, yeah, that's great. That we'd love to have an architect come in. And is this something that you've been doing? I said, yeah, this is what sort of I've been involved with more recently, and I find it actually pretty interesting because I attended some reviews, and students are bringing boards with furniture and materials and samples, and I'm just amazed that in architecture school we don't do this. We don't really get involved with the fabrics or textiles and furniture and lighting and beyond natural lighting, but not the actual fixtures and how to. I mean, all of these things have to do with your experience of a space, and yet we seem to like sort of move away from that and let someone else come in and kind of finish it, and that makes me crazy. So I don't know what your thought is about that, but that was my experience in school, and I really
totally. Yeah, I didn't learn anything about interior design. Well, I didn't learn much, if anything, about interior design in college. And as a high-end residential architect, it's definitely part of our job, whether or not the client wants us to be part of that, whether or not they have the money to pay for it, or whether or not they have the inclination to hire you, or whether or not they already have interior people that their friends like and they're going to hire them instead. I mean, they're all different types of experience that I have with interiors. But when you're talking about all of lighting is a perfect example. Mm-hmm. I mean, we'll do a little bit of electrical stuff in college, but the realities are, that marketplace is changing so rapidly. And, I've got to be on top of simple things like what kind of light fixtures are we now specifying for interior recessed fixtures? 3 years ago, it wasn't LEDs, I can tell you that. And now everything is LED fixtures. And so, there's a ton of technical information that architects need to be aware of today, and they're not going to get that in school. And just in general, I mean, you talked about fabrics. My goodness. I mean, nobody in architecture school, unless you're talking about a metal skin on an exterior of a building, it's metal fabric. You're not talking about fabrics. That's not something that you ever get into. And I'll tell you one thing I learned. As you may recall, I'm a classically trained painter, and I studied color theory. And we really should have a firm grasp on why colors, simple things like why one color works with another color. Mm-hmm. Nobody ever teaches you that in college, right? So, and that's a relatively simple thing. I mean, that's something you could cover in 2 or 3 classes. And you talk to kids about why colors work together, and this is what architects do in terms of color. Again, that's an exterior, but even more so an interior thing we never go through. So
I'm going to have you come in the spring I'll make an excuse, but I'll come have you give a little talk to the group about color. I think that's a good idea.
Awesome. I'd love that.
Yeah. No, it's for larger projects, if people are not aware, I've worked in corporate offices, and architects are like conductors. There's such a high degree of technical knowledge that you need to do everything. So we will have consultants. We will have, yes, architect, and there may be an urban designer if it's a sort of city plan. There may be a landscape designer for the outside. So that's sort of over the outside of the building. We have maybe an interior designer, interior design team. There's a lighting consultant. There's an HVAC consultant. It goes on and on and on. And what happens when you're talking about a house, most people really don't have all those consultants. And so it's really left to us, mostly us, to hopefully know as much as possible about all of these different areas. And, obviously working on bigger projects, I certainly have some knowledge about all these things. But if you ask me, specifically about certain green building strategies, are you the expert? I'm not the expert. And I would feel uncomfortable sort of saying I'm the expert. But I have some experience. So what we really need to do is, so we have to access all this stuff. And if someone really says, hey, really, this is really important to me, that's an area that I have to kind of immerse myself in. And we do a lot of research and we get into it and we sort of, we need to learn all the time. And someone says, hey, they want us, certain kind of lighting, or they want to explore geothermal, or they want to do a lot of, they want to do a lot of custom furniture, then we have to get into it, right? I mean, I really don't really say I can't do things, because I think I can figure it out, right?
Never say that.
Well, there's certain moments probably I would just say, look, I need to bring it.
Right, I'm not LEED certified. There you go.
Actually, I am.
I can't do
it. Doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean very much, but yeah, exactly. Someone asked me about geothermal, and I said, look, I need to bring a consultant, and I really don't know how to dig a mile into the ground to get energy to your house. It's just not something so it's hopefully a good architect will, if not know from a lot of experience, know where to go to find that information, or know who to partner with or collaborate with or who to consult with. Again, for a house, it's probably not likely, maybe at the bigger houses that you do, but it's not likely you'll have a lighting consultant, an interior designer, a landscape architect or landscape designer. You may not have all of these things. And so, it's really left to a good architect or a good designer to really sort of pull all this together and help with the homeowner really to create, what it is they're looking for. So there's a lot of, it's not, this is why each job is different and unique. And there's a lot of, you really need a good person to work with that is willing to kind of invest the time and resources to, design what you want. So something to look for in an architect is a lifelong learner type like yourself, right, Doug?
Right on, baby.
All right, Doug. So I think we know where we're going when the, okay, buddy? We know where we're going in the, when we start up again in the fall. We'll definitely find some more great guests. I've got a lot sort of planned, but if people at home have some other thoughts or suggestions, we definitely want to pursue this client angle too. I think that might be fun. I also want to bring a contractor on board just to, I think that might be interesting to hear it from their perspective, because, we often not fight, but we we interact. And I think it might be interesting to hear how I guess a contractor sees an architect and sees what
I think it's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to do that.
Awesome. Okay, so any last thoughts from you before you head off for vacation?
No thoughts. I'm glad we talked about this though, because it definitely makes me think about maybe broaden my net a little bit in terms of who we can have on.
Yeah.
To have some discussions, talk about fun things. So
hey, selfishly, I really enjoy. I learn a lot from these other people. Right? Someone in Pacific Northwest, or I really enjoy hearing what they deal with and how they handle different situations. I find this really interesting. So, even if no one listens, I'll keep doing it just because.
One more year, baby.
Awesome. All right, Doug. Why don't you close it out for us?
You've been listening to Design Your Dream Home with Doug and Steve. Thanks so much for joining us. Remember, we love to hear from you. So visit the site at thedougandsteveshow.com. Shoot us an email, and we'll get right back to you. Look forward to next time.
My Twitter following is just going crashing into the ground ever since we started this show. I don't know what's going on. I've lost like 1,000 followers in like the summer.
How many followers do you have?
2,000.
No. every once in a while I'll see something. You might mention me in a tweet, but I'm never on Twitter. I just do not go on that platform. It like perplexes me, and I never feel like I have anything to say. So Instagram is really the only, other than YouTube. You know, I do things not because they're going to make money. I do them because I love to do them. And, you know, one of the things that really makes me happy in life is to make to make something and have other people consume it, buy it. You know, like when I had a t-shirt company, I had 2,000 or 3,000 t-shirts in my basement.
Oh.
And they were half of it was printed inventory, and the company was called Groove King. And we had like 12 t-shirts, me and my business partner, Brian. And, you know, although I complained about it, they were all packaged. They were ready to go. I did all the fulfillment. So we get an order and it comes in and I get an email. Somebody ordered, you know, this tee. And I fucking love that. I mean, it was like the most wonderful thing I ever got to do in my life. Somebody ordered something I made. I got to go down in my basement, pull the plastic out. There was the shirt in a little plastic square. I got to, you know, put it in a bag, UPS bag, and put the address on it and ship it out. And then every once in a while, I get an email from somebody and say, "Well, I love that T-shirt. You know, that was such a cool design." And getting to design the website, I just enjoyed that whole process. You know, it got me into this mindset where I started thinking about myself as a product development person and an entrepreneur. And it was really fun. You know, that was something I really enjoyed. And I get the same kind of kicks out of making YouTube videos. You know, I'm not going to lie. I love when the numbers are up. I love when people find my videos fascinating or interesting. I don't think I've ever found in business, you know, across the spectrum of all of the things that I've ever done, I've never really hit on the one thing that people just love to consume. You know, it just never happened. And so, you know, yeah, YouTube's been around for 10 years and there's 160,000 followers. But I make a video and, you know, I'm lucky if I had 2,000 people watch it in 3 or 4 days. And then the numbers won't go up. Maybe it's 8,000 in a couple months. You know, it's not spectacular and I wish it was more. But I think all the other downsides, the things I don't like about social media and even YouTube, you know, keep me from really just digging into it. And I don't know, I've just never really found the thing that people want to consume, you know, but I enjoy it. But, you know, back to your point about, well, you make a lot of free content. And so, you know, it's really tough to change the paradigm and be successful. I completely agree with you, you know, and so I've thought about taking this movie and just putting it on YouTube and making it free. And, you know, hell, it's like everything else I make, you know, it's free. I don't make any money making it, you know. I guess that's my lot in life. I don't know.